Turf Business TV are joined by David Snowden from Agronomic Services and Russell Latham from Premier Pitches today. Morning guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to have a bit of a chat in a minute about how people might cope with some of the issues they're facing through our current lockdown and lack of availability of things. But first off, Russell, if I can just start with you. For people that don't know you, you're working with Premier Pitches. What do you do and what are Premier Pitches all about?
Good morning, Martin. Good morning, David.
Morning.
Yeah, my name is Russell Latham. I'm a director at Premier Pitches. The company itself has been established for over 20 years. Carl Pass is the managing director. We specialise in renovation of football pitches, so we get busy at this time of year. Normally, around this time, without COVID-19 to worry us, we'll be absolutely full steam ahead, approaching 100 mile an hour.
So currently, are you all sitting on your hands, or are you kind of got stuff that is going on?
At the moment, we're not sitting on our hands because we've lost some of the workforce due to the shielding enforcement of the government, the 12-week stay-at-home requests, and one or two with wives that are expecting and showing symptoms. So our team is depleted, but we're still managing to get 3 teams out on the road, able to renovate pitches when our clients are demanding or asking us to go in there.
So are you anticipating that essentially you're going to get a lot of renovations at a different time of year, or is it kind of going to be over for this year?
I must be honest, Martin, we've been relatively busy over the past few weeks doing, shall we say, scaled down works. The planned works that people were expecting to do have been brought forward but scaled down. So we've been very busy. It's still a bit uncertain. A lot of clubs I'm speaking to are unsure again of when the season will start, so they can't really gauge what they can do because they don't know the window they've got to establish the pitch, ready for the next use, ready for the next training session.
So you work pretty much across the board at elite level and a bit below that, I guess, as well. But I think with David here, we're going to have a discussion around what lessons can be learned and passed on perhaps for people further down the tree, particularly I guess in football at the moment, but other sports will have a relevance in that. So I don't know if you want to kick off and start your discussion with David.
Well, the elite level, what do we class the elite? From Chelsea, Manchester United, Man City, etc. They've all got the hybrid pitches, the super pitch constructions that still need renovating. But those standards that the elite level have set certainly are the ones that the lower leagues down the pyramid aspire to be, even though they don't have the type of construction. So over the past few years, I would say they've upped the game in terms of trying to do renovations and day-to-day maintenance throughout the year to try and bring their level up. They're hit now. They just don't have the money to spend. It's quite clear to see. Nothing coming in, there's nothing going out. So they've got to come up with a solution to help them get through this time and through the winter, because we are a winter sport when we're talking about football and rugby. So what's the best way forward for these guys? I'm not too sure. Any views on that, David?
Yeah, hi Russ. Yeah, I mean, going back to what you just mentioned about a full renovation, which we were talking with Andy in a previous discussion, where you say you're doing a less renovation or the major renovation, what's that entailing? Because this is more of a discussion group. I know agronomically and chemically what we can do, but from a standpoint of, say, Premier Pitches coming in and doing a mini renovation, what does that, I'm not throwing the question back, but it's up to the discussion, is what sort of thing is that? Do we go in with a very strong scarification and an aeration time? What do we do? How far do you go? Or so from a training pitch. Yeah, go on.
If we call a standard renovation is removing all of the organic matter on the surface, all of the vegetation. So basically back to brand new. So in terms, we're not renovating, we're getting rid of the old and bringing in a new pitch. So that gets seeded, everything's gone. So when we're talking about the scaled down renovation, that really is an intensive scarify, probably with slightly different times to really get into the surface, to remove some of that organic matter that's built up on the surface, which is really the problem for any sand-based pitch going into the winter months. So we're basically going over the pitch repeatedly to remove that vegetation, still seed, still sand, still aerate, and still fertilise. So again, it's nothing like the normal reno, but it's a halfway house, should we call it, still doing something, but there's always going to be the need to do a little bit more work in the autumn to just get on top of it, ready for the winter season.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. When someone says, I'm going to do less of a renovation, that doesn't mean to say that you can get away with not doing anything after that. You made a perfect point that we've now got a situation where we've taken off some of the rubbish. However, then you're still going to build up a chemical mat, an organic matter, a mat of through the summer period, and then going into the autumn. And if we have the rainfall like we did this winter, then there's going to be an awful lot of pitches are going to be really, really in a poor state, and including training pitches for that matter, depending on where and what they are.
Yeah, totally agree.
Most of the sports pitches that aren't hybrid are high percentage soils. And so I think agree with me or discuss this, where it later on in the summer going into autumn, they need to consider some big aeration machinery type scenarios. Definitely. Where you like on a golf course, we'd go in with a fairway aerator and put some decent holes down and put a bit of heave on there. And then at least you're going to have pore spaces that water can move through the profile. But then that's educating the powers that be. Okay, we're not going to do this major renovation. However, you're going to do this now, and then we're going to have to do this and this later on in the autumn into winter.
Yeah, the verti-draining, the aeration works always makes me smile, because we talk about verti-draining, we feel that will make a pitch drain. It doesn't necessarily do that, because when we need the pitch to drain, it's too late. We should be doing that work leading up to it. So it's aeration works with deep tine aeration, solid tine aeration. I mean, we've over many years had our machine called the Gwazi. You probably remember that, David. We talked about a deep probe aeration. It's a little bit like the Air 2G2.
Sure.
Like the old Robin Dagger.
Yep.
We had this machine probably 8, 9, 10 years ago from New Zealand. Great tool, but it was very unreliable. And we've, a bit like the $6 million man, we've rebuilt it. And it only cost around $6 million to rebuild it. But just during the wet season, we did some high-end schools down in the southeast. Great results. And then obviously this came along. There was a lot in the order book for that type of a sports facility. Soil-based, London clay, get some air deep into the profile, 700, 800 millimeters deep, and blast it open and just help it go along. And the feedback was good.
You've said something that is very important, and this comes back all the way through to agriculture. When I was doing advisory work in agronomy and agriculture, people will see a field and there's some tram lines of where a tractor goes, and that tram line is built for the spraying and the harvesting and combining. Well, come the end of the season, when there's just a stubble there, there's these tram lines in the field, and guess what? There's a big tractor with a whopping great subsoiler that goes down 2 feet with a mole on it, and that takes out the aeration of those two compacted wheels. There's no reason why that type of machine, not quite as aggressive, can go into a soil-based pitch, and like you just said, you can put in a blast aeration in the compacted areas. And I think that's where some of these less affluent pitches can start considering what they should do. And that's renovation work. It is.
Yeah, it is. It's renovation work. It's not just
just the surface.
It's not just the surface. It's not just a one-off. It needs to be brought into the process annually. Biannually, whatever we want to call it. It really needs to be brought into that forefront and the mindset of everybody. And again, costs dictate, David and Martin. They really cost dictate, and it all depends on budgets for these guys. But the aeration thing as a whole is something I don't believe people do enough of.
No,
because it's presumed as, I'll do it this year, but I won't do it next year
or
the year after.
The old analogy again, I can not have food for quite a while and survive. I can go without water for quite a while and survive. But if you stick a plastic bag on my head, I'm not going to look too good after about 2 minutes.
Definitely.
And grass needs oxygen.
Definitely
And
not.
so do the roots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
And
totally
so,
agree.
there's that old equation of where when people have moisture meters and they say, well, I'm very proud I'm working around about the 25% moisture. Well, all I'm bothered about is what oxygen you've got there, never mind what moisture you've got there.
Yeah, yeah. Help the grassroots, help the plant.
Definitely,
Well,
which has been a part of the conversation, again, making the soil more efficient at its job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Horrible inert sands, David.
Oh, tell me about it. Absolutely. It's hybrids. Yeah, quite. Give me a soil pitch any day. But then understanding that the management have still got to put work into it through the season.
Yeah. But back to that at that level then. So we're saying aeration is very important. If they can, they can't afford to do anything else, get some holes in the pitch, number one.
Yep.
Try and scarify. Maybe overseed the high wear areas. Maybe put a little bit of sand dressing on if they can afford it. Those little things are going to pay them back over the season, I'm sure, without doubt. But it needs to be something that we try and get back on track with next year. If we get back to normality, if there is going to be normality back in our life, I'm sure
there's going to be a lot of pitches and clubs that won't have the money.
Oh no!
I mean, physically they'll go under.
Yeah. Disappear. It's a horrible situation we're in. And even back to some of the elite level where we've done the scale down renovation, that's something that we're reminding people that we need to think about that second hit on renovation. If you're doing a halfway house, we need to pick up the autumn work, and if that's September, or if that's in the next close season, if we have a close season again, it's unknown, isn't it? When will the season start? When will we have a close season? When will the new season start? I have no idea. But particularly in stadium environments, that's going to be so important. If you've done a halfway house, you could do something else getting ready for the winter months. Definitely. These guys have set high standards. These top groundsmen in our country and abroad set high standards. And once they start to deteriorate, it's something that Sky Sports talk about, or BT Sport, isn't it? They're going to mention, the pitches aren't as good this year. Is it because of the virus? Probably not, but it's a knock-on effect.
Very much a knock-on effect. And I think that would be a good way to look to help people all the way down. Again, starting from the top, is understanding that there will be the renovation package cost, and then there'll be part two, chapter 2 of it later in the season, and there's going to be a cost involved in that, and they'll have to pick a maintenance window where they haven't got matches back to back, where you can go in and do some physical work. If they don't have the machinery on site.
Totally agree. And obviously the fertilising programs, David, the feeding program, nutrition, we at the high end, we every stadium, bar none in the Premier League, has got grow lights. Brings its own problems, makes the grass grow every day, but then it builds up that organic layer.
Sure.
There's got to be the lower end, don't have that, but we need the plant to be healthy. We're looking after the pitches at the moment, but some of the guys have been furloughed. There's not many ground staff. People are putting growth retardant on, but we need the pitches to still look okay, but I can't afford fertiliser. What's the answer there, David, on your side? What can these guys look at there?
Sure, and this is going to be a bit of a continue of the conversations that we've probably had in the past and in the future, that you've got so many different capabilities. Again, I use the terminology foliar feeding, which is 150 litres to 300 litres total spray volume, and you can get very high accuracy with a very low percentage. And at this time of year, when and renovation's not going to happen, you are just maintaining survival without shoving bags of fertiliser on to get it to grow, because we've got lots of games and we're lots of play. And so again, whether it's a hybrid pitch or a very free draining, or whether it's a more of a soil-based, you can still, and I'm a great advocate of liquid feeding and foliar feeding, but getting the soil to be, a root zone to be far more efficient at its job is not a difficult procedure. And if clubs can't be maintained, you can then still go in as Premier Pitches or whoever it might be and sort of say, look, this is a feed plan that you should be looking at, of how to manage and maintain what you've got under these circumstances. And, we're not putting on 1,000 units of nitrogen or 1,500 units. We can put on 400 or 500 units, but we're putting it in a strategic way of some foliar, some soil liquids, and some granulars. And then, a liquid feed, foliar feed, you're not going to get anywhere near the growth that you are of a bag of fertiliser. and so it's damping it down just to pure maintenance feeding, and this
still keeping the plant healthy.
Purely
Yeah.
keeping the vitamins and minerals and amino acids and the goodies that can go through the leaf, and we're going to talk about growth regulators in situations. Well, there's growth promoters and there's growth inhibitors. The seaweeds are growth, to help growth, but if we're putting a PGR on there, why are you doing it? If you've got too much nitrogen being produced, why are you putting a PGR on? It's backwards and forward, but it's reduction of nitrogen is one of the key things.
Yeah, great.